Hello, before I start my oral history interview, I wasn't able to interview my dad. We never had time to schedule a time. So I did replace him with my uncle, and his name is.
Eric Flores.
And now let's just begin. Um, Hello, Eric Flores. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Eric Flores. I am 48 years old, and today I'll be answering some questions for you guys.
So let's get started. And I'm gonna start off with question number one. What was your childhood like?
My childhood life was very, I guess you could say, rough in a type of way. I remember my dad will always make us clean the pigs, the pigs' poop, the horses' poop, not the sheep's poop. Before I left for school, I remember this one time I didn't clean it. I was like, man, I don't want to do this because each time I would clean it, I would always go to school smelling like a farmer, like animal wise, you know. I remember this one time I didn't do it, and he got home. I came back from school. He was just sitting there right there on the table. Next thing you know, I was eating. As soon as I took a bite, he took out his belt and started whipping me so many times, and it's just crazy because like it was one time I missed a day of cleaning the poop. I got I got spanked really hard.
Okay. Um, we're moving on to question number two. What were your favorite childhood memories?
One of my favorite childhood memories was when I would play soccer with my brother and my cousins and some other kids from the barrio. Um, I remember this one time we were playing, and then these two older kids they had pushed my older brother, and he started crying really bad, and I got mad. My cousins and I got mad. So what we did was, once that happened, we went running towards them. We started fighting, and pretty much it was just a whole fight. And it was funny because like everyone was right there, you know. And instead of everyone trying to stop it, everyone was just cheering on. Everyone got gathered together and many things like that. And the way that happened is because in our times, we used to live in a small town, so every single time we would play soccer, all the people from that town will gather up, see the game, and make things like that.
All right. Moving on to question number three. What challenges did you face as a child?
One of the challenges I have faced as a child was um not taking advantage of school because of my father's decisions. I remember he made me drop out of school when I was in seventh grade. He told me, son, why do you keep on going to school? You know, you won't get nothing right there. You won't get your money. I want you to drop out and come work with me. You know, driving the trucks and many things like that. And back in the old times, I would drive trucks with animals. I would sell pigs, sheep, turkeys, chickens, all those kinds of animals. And back then, my dad just told me to help him out with that, and I'll do deliveries for him. It was pretty much a decision that he did. It wasn't really my choice. And I guess that's something that will always be forever stuck with me.
All right. That was part one of my questions about his childhood and early life. Moving on to part two. I'm gonna be asking him questions about his major life events and historical influences. Um, Question number one. What major historical events do you remember impacting your life the most?
One of the events that impacted my life the most was my mother passing away. Um, as when I was 14 years old, I remember I had crossed the border into the U.S. And at that time, I left my mom pretty at a young age, so I never got to see her and many things like that. And after a few months passed by, I remember my mom would tell me, son, please come back. I miss you, and this and that, right? I didn't think about it much, so like I told her, no, mom, it's okay. I'll send you guys money, this and that, right? Turns out, she was diagnosed with cancer. She had it was somewhere on her brain where she developed something, and it pretty much just took her life. And at that moment, it impacted my life because I was the youngest child, and since she wanted to see me, it's like I pretty much didn't listen to her. She passed away. I never got to see her, and it just pretty much impacted my life because that thing always got stuck in my in my mind. Every single time it would be Mother's Day, her birthday, I always get emotional. I always feel lonely. I never had that feeling of having a mother in my life, so that's one thing that impacted my life.
All right, moving on to question number 2. How did those events change your way of thinking or living?
That changed my way of thinking throughout my life, by taking advantage of my family that I have now. Now that anything happens, I always want to spend time with them, whether it's something quick, whether it's something fast and easy. I don't want to make the same mistake, so that had impacted my life by showing up for my family, for my daughters, and yeah.
All right, moving on to question number 3. Have you ever faced a moment where history directly affected your family's life?
Yes. There was a time when back in the early 2000s, um, the laws were different. Since since I was, I guess you could say, I quote, alien. Um, the police were much harder on us back in the days, since they basically they would just play with us. They wouldn't care about us. They'll mess with us. They would just pretty much do a lot of things since they were the law and we couldn't do nothing. I remember this one time I was driving to Jack in the Box. Uh, back then, you know how us Latinos were basically known for dressing up as cholos. I don't know if you guys know about that, but that was basically how we were all dressing up back then. And so I was cruising down the street. I remember I was wearing a brown button up shirt with squares with a hat. And next thing you know, a police stopped me. Once they stopped me, they had called for backup. So like there was four police surrounded the car, and they all had their guns out, and they made me get out the car and many things like that. That was one thing that we as Latinos had faced in the early 2000s, since we were basically targeted by the police, and it was just many things like that that would affect us. Like we couldn't really get a job, we couldn't really do anything. We will always have to hide, or I guess you could say run away from the police or immigration. It was just many things like that because back in the earlys, it was just the laws were different. They were more stricter, and basically we had no right at all.
All right. We're gonna move on to part 3, cultural and societal expectations. We're gonna start with question number 1. What cultural traditions were important in your family?
One of the traditions that were important in my family was that we would always spend time together. Um, Throughout the holidays, we would always have this dinner, a famous dish that's called tamales. That's one tradition that we always do. We will always make tamales. Another one is, um, we will always go to church every Sunday mornings. That will also be one thing in our daily lives that we will do, is go to church, do many things like that. Now the other traditions that we had was, well, I mean, back in Mexico, we grew up basically taking care of animals. So one of the traditions was that we will always have to clean the animals. It was basically like we were in a ranch where we were having to, you know, do all these kind of things for a tradition to live and to do many things like that.
All right, moving on to question number 2. Have your views on gender roles changed over time? If so, how?
Yes, the gender roles have changed over time. Back in the days, I would see more jobs. I would see more men's working than females, and I feel like that will always be one thing that will stick with me because back then, I guess you could say we were more masculine, where men will work and the ladies will stay at home. And now that times have changed, we're in 2025. I see all kinds of genders now. I see more women working at, I guess you could say, manly jobs and many things like that. And it just pretty much sums up how everything changes so fast. There's many things that we don't know what could happen, or many things that we don't expect. So it's just pretty much something, I guess you could say, something amazing that everything could change throughout time.
Okay, and lastly, my last question in that section is, what values were passed down to you and how do you see them in today's world?
One of the values that were passed down to me was that my father had always told me, once you have a family, no matter what happens, you will always have to provide for them. You will always have to work hard for them. And one of the main things that you will not do is do not leave your wife for somebody else. Now that my father has always, told me that because it was just one of the few things that us Christians could do. That I guess it was in the Bible, and now that many things have changed, I've seen my nephews get married. Next, a few years pass by, they leave their wife, and it just doesn't sit right with me because like all of this, all of these choices that they're making is something serious that they don't really see, and it just basically had changes everything. Because back then, well, back in my days, we will marry someone, it will be like that. We'll stay with them forever. And now many people marry with someone else. The next, they end up breaking up and leaving them.
All right, now we're going to move on to part 4, personal challenges and identity. First question on the list is, what has been the biggest challenge you faced in life?
One of the biggest challenges I faced in life was when I first had come into the U.S. I remember I was trying to find a job, and you know I wouldn't find anything good. And once I was able to find a job, they would pay me so little. I remember I'll get paid about $3 or $4 an hour, and it just sucks because I remember I'll wash cars, and at that time I will see rich people come in with their suits, with a nice car, with the money, and it made me compare myself to them, and it basically messed up my, I guess you could say, mental health, because I would think low of myself than have higher hopes of myself. Um, those were one of the challenges I faced throughout life. I would have to get multiple jobs in order to provide for for my parents that were in Mexico. I would have to provide for myself, for my rent, and everything like that. Pretty much, it was just pretty much hard growing up in the U.S. as an immigrant back in the early 2000s, since we had low opportunities of doing anything throughout the time.
All right, now moving on to question number 2. How did you overcome difficult moments?
The way I overcame difficult moments was by leaving it up to God. Um, like I said, we will always go to church Sunday mornings. So what I'll do is I'll talk to God, I'll pray, I'll have my moments where I'll speak to Him myself and tell Him that if He could help me out, do many things like that. And I know some people don't really believe in God or Christianity, but trust me, as once you put yourself with God, just let Him do what He wants you to do. It may not. I know that people think that it's gonna work right away, but it's not. So just be faithful to Him, have faith, and throughout time, as your life will get better. If you know you're doing good, you follow the rules and many things like that.
All right, then moving on to question number 3. How do you define success and happiness?
Um, the way I define success and happiness is by me thinking a good way of me overcoming the stuff that I did throughout my life. Um, it might be different for others, but the way that I see it, it's something that I wish my daughters would not go through. So I guess um, I could put that as happiness in my life because even though there was hard moments of me working or my mother passing away and me getting barely living with the minimum wage, all that became worth it because I have right here my beautiful daughters. Right here, she's going to university. I never had a chance to, and that's the way I define success and happiness. As long as you do everything good and do everything correct, the way it has to be, that's the way I see success and happiness.
Good answer. Now we're gonna go on to question number 4. Looking back, is there anything you wish? Good answer. Now we're gonna go to question number 4. Looking back, is there anything you wish you had done differently?
No. I feel like if I had done something differently, the things that I have right now wouldn't be the same as if I had done them differently. Even though my life was hard, I will always have it. I always prefer to have it this way than another way. I can't imagine myself having it a different way because like who knows what happened next, you know? What if I'm not even right here right now, like, doing all that kind of stuff? What if my daughter doesn't go to college because of doing all that stuff? I feel like once you work hard, I'd rather keep it that way than doing it a different way, and I feel like that's something good.
All right. And now, lastly, part 5, I'll be asking him community and health and wellness. Question number 1. How has your view of health and wellness changed as you've aged?
The view of health and wellness has changed throughout time, especially over here in the U.S. compared to Mexico. Over there in Mexico, yeah, you had doctors and this and that, but the thing is, they wouldn't be that good as some doctors over here, you know? The doctors over there, they'll just pretty much tell you what you have, give you some pills, and that's it. Even though you're badly injured, they'll be like, oh, take this, you'll be good. Now, over here, I guess you could say it's pretty much the same thing because as an immigrant, you can't really get checked up by a doctor since we don't have no medical, and we would just have to pay for the doctors to get checked out. But I've seen changes because when I'll pay right here to go to the doctor or to get checked up, even though it would be pretty much expensive, they'll always tell me what I had, or like they'll recommend me to go to this one place where it's cheaper, where it actually had good, or they'll tell me to fill out some files, some forms where I could get support by the government with the medical amenities like that.
All right. And my last question overall, what advice would you give to future generations about life and resilience?
One advice I would give to the future generations is to not give up. I know life may seem hard right now on you guys, but trust me, I've seen harder. So like, keep on studying because once you study with college, well, once you finish with college, it will be worth it. You will have to work. You will be working in the office in the shade, with conditioner, with benefits. Not like me where I had to work in the sun, I had to work in the heat. I'll get all the bare minimum wage. I had no benefits or none of that. So as long as you keep on working hard, well, it'll be worth it towards the end because you know you get many things, you'll get many privileges that I couldn't have, and yeah,
Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for giving me your time.
you're welcome.